Good morning. I'm glad that the crew got my note that I need a grail to drink from when I'm preaching. Hey, I was instructed that we need to do a scooch. It's a Bible word, to scooch. So if you are could everybody just kind of, if there's a seat in your row, stand up and move towards the center. I think you might be okay over here. We've got some seats, and that way people who are coming in late, they'll have a seat, and we can also judge them. Okay. I'm just kidding. Hey, I want to take a poll. Raise your hand if in the last 7 days you've had the thought, I did not get enough sleep. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Okay, raise your hand if in the last 7 days you would say, I didn't work out enough. Okay, yeah, okay. Raise your hand if in the last 7 days you would say, I didn't have enough time to get everything done that I needed to do. Okay, I feel like these are the same hands. This is good. Okay, raise your hand if you say in the last 7 days, I didn't have enough me time. Okay, good. That's what you've been doing all your time. A lot of you are like, I had plenty of me time. That's why I didn't have enough time for getting stuff done. Raise your hands if you say in the last 7 days you didn't have enough time with people that you care about. Friends, family. Yeah, okay. What's the word that's in common with all the questions I've just asked? No, enough. Enough. Time was also in there, that's true. Way to pay attention. That was great. It was a test. You all passed. Enough. I've always had this really interesting relationship with enough. When I was in college, I thought that the E on my gas gauge stood for enough rather than empty. I was like, as long as I'm kind of close to that E, I got enough. And this was back when gas was 99 cents a gallon. So for you younger people, this is in the before ages, when everything was black and white. And I would scrounge together change to fill up my car with $2.74, and I was hoping that would get me to Friday. Some of you are like, yeah, I remember those beautiful days. But all along the way, I thought when on one level I had enough, but that enough gave me a sense of anxiety, like I wasn't going to have enough to get me to where I needed to go. And then later on, I had an electric car. I know probably, is that like a legal requirement in San Francisco to drive an all-electric car? But I had one, and then I had a different anxiety. It was called range anxiety, right? So I didn't have enough charge to get me to where I wanted to go. And so here's the solution to that. If you've ever had that anxiety, I don't have a car anymore. I don't even own one. So in whatever area of your life you're struggling with any anxiety, just get rid of it. Get rid of him, get rid of the job, get rid of... Let's pray. The band can come right back up. Yeah, all of that wrestling with enough comes from a mindset that we've all played with before, and I'm not the first person to suggest that you struggle with it sometimes, and that's a scarcity mindset, right? That there's just not going to be enough of fill in the blank. There's not enough fish in the sea. There's not going to be enough money. There's not going to be enough time. I don't have the strength enough to do what I want to do, or I'm running out of years of my life because I continue to get older. But what I want us to wrestle with today is I want us to take ownership of the places in our lives where we are buying into this perspective of reality, this worldview of scarcity, because it is a conviction. If in some area of your life right now you're feeling anxious or you're feeling like things are going to run out, you're basing that perspective on a belief that life is a depleting resource. That's what the mindset of scarcity is teaching us or telling us or whispering in our ear. Life is a depleting resource and it's going to run out on me. This series has been dedicated to taking ownership of the things we can, because there's so much in our lives, circumstances that are outside of our direct control, but how we respond to those circumstances and how we respond to people, that changes the game. If we can take ownership of our responses, if we can take ownership of our perspectives of the world, it actually changes our future and changes the impact that we're able to make and changes how we experience life. And who in this room doesn't want to experience more life, not more anxiety? And today I want to invite us to wrestle with, take ownership of the places where we're living with a scarcity mindset. And scarcity, might remind you of this goblet here, this goblet of holiness that we have in the front of the church here. And this is often how we relate to life as this depleting resource that maybe, the reason that we can't give is because we've only got so much to give and then it will run out. We can't give any more time because we are exhausted. Maybe you're a parent of very young children and you're like, I don't got anything left in me. I don't have any energy. And so every time you take a hit or you experience a setback, right, like tax time, and I'm sorry because there's nothing grosser than hearing somebody swallow. So I'm sorry if that's coming through the microphone. Oh my goodness. Then with the gap that you feel like you now have in your life, you've increased your anxiety. And so I don't blame you if you're really concerned if anybody would take from you or if you would spill some of it, like you would waste some of it, or you definitely don't feel like giving any of it. I'm not just talking about your money. I'm talking about any place in your life where you feel like you really have got to hoard or hustle to try and keep what you have, because if you let go of any of it, there is not more where that came from. Life is a depleting resource. And it's more than just a feeling that we have, a feeling of anxiety or a feeling of overwhelm or a feeling of scarcity. It does show up in our behaviors. It does show up in our addictions. There's not going to be enough joy or life or energy, and so I need to zone out a little bit. It shows up in really bad financial decisions that you've got to get while the getting's good, and so maybe you invest in things or you purchase things because you just need that. While I have it, I might as well spend it because there's not more where that came from. It shows up in some of your bad relationship decisions. I suppose this is as good as I'm going to get, and so I might as well just keep repeating the pattern of settling, right? It also shows up in some really odd ways that I was reflecting on the way here. And it shows up often in our jealousies. Right now, just identify who in your life you would say you are jealous of. You don't have to say it out loud. I'm definitely not going to call on anybody. But I know there's a name. And you're jealous of them for some reason. Maybe they have more of what you really do desire. They have more money. They have more, like maybe it's their looks, it's their health, it's time that you feel like they have. Maybe they're younger. They might have more authority, more influence. What is the name of that person that you're jealous of? And I don't want to shame you because that is such an ordinary human experience to be jealous. It starts from a really beautiful place, actually. Most jealousy starts from a vision. It starts from something that inspired you. You look at what somebody else has achieved or has experienced, and you're like, wow, what if? Wow, what if my faith looked like her faith? What if my lifestyle looked like his lifestyle? What if my marriage looked like their marriage? That's not a bad place to start, inspiration. But then that inspiration, if we relate to it like life is a depleting resource, like there's only so much of that goodness to go around, then it metastasizes into jealousy. And all of a sudden, the fact that somebody else has that thing threatens whether or not I'm ever going to have that thing. And it changes the way that I relate to the people who have a thing that I really desire. That's scarcity. Life is a depleting resource. It shows up in other weird ways, like it shows up in our hustle. San Francisco, you get me. I'm from Los Angeles. I get the hustle thing. Hustle comes from a really good place. It's the desire to grow. It's the desire to make progress. It's the desire to create value in the world, and so we hustle. And yet it seems like it is a part of our American doctrine that you have to do enough to finally become enough. Anybody feel me on that? You don't just have a resume, you are your resume. You don't just have a couple of trophies, you are how many trophies are up on that shelf, yeah? And so we hustle because we feel like if we do not take action, how dare we sleep? Because life is a depleting resource. And if we don't get going, then we're gonna miss our shot. Do not miss your chance to blow because opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Yo. But here's the encouraging thing. Even though we all suffer from scarcity, and even after this very perfect message about scarcity and how to get rid of it, you're going to suffer from it this afternoon, I promise you. But it is encouraging to realize that scarcity is a lie. It is a ghost story. It is a total delusion. There's a humanitarian Lynn Twist actually helps us here in one of her recent books. Scarcity is a lie, independent of any actual amount of resources. It is an unexamined and false system of assumptions, opinions, and beliefs from which we view the world as a place where we are in constant danger of having our needs unmet. Some area of your life right now, that is how you see the world. That is just the way it is. I will never have enough. I will never be enough. I will never make enough. It will never feel good enough. And life is a depleting resource. What I want to do first is take us back to some of our earliest experiences as humans so that you don't feel alone. You're not weird that you feel this way because we have always wrestled with it. I want to take us to the book of Genesis. And if you're somebody who brought a Bible or you have the app, go to Genesis chapter 1. And I'm going to start in verse 29. And if you don't have one, that's okay. We're going to put all the words up on the screen so nobody loses track. But I don't know what your assumption is or how you relate to Scripture or even really the book of Genesis, but one of the things I love about these writings is that it's not so much concerned with how things got started, though it addresses that. Instead, it's really more concerned with bigger questions, like why did anything get started? And who, if anybody, got the thing started? Those are very important questions to answer if there are answers to those questions. I think Genesis addresses those. And also, whether or not you think that this is just metaphor or fairy tale, I would invite you to consider how much this, what I'm about to read, reflects your human experience. And it might even lend some validity to what we're reading here. Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. This is right after the human race got started. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth. Listen to this comprehensive language. And every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food, and it was so. God's saying, I made it all, and I want to give it all to you. Whoa. Like to cultivate it, nurture it, share it, steward it, enjoy it. I want to give it all to you. It almost seems, at first glance, like an irresponsible amount of giving. I have 2 teenagers. This looks like spoiling. My wife and I are always wrestling with, like, do we need to give them like time limits on certain apps? Like, we don't want to give them too much comfort because it's going to spoil their character. They got to grind it out. And here, God's getting us started, the perfect father, and he's like, you got it all. Just take it all. Go nuts. And then right in the middle of limitless giving, he plants just one limit. I think this story gets misunderstood all the time. They think, oh, all of humanity fell apart because we ate an apple. No. In the real context of the story, it's like, you got all this stuff. There's one little limit. Okay? And what do we do with it? Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. We do what we always do with these things. And the Lord God commanded the man, you are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree, from a tree, the one tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Gong, gong, gong. One of the things that strikes me about the writings of Scripture, the biographies of Jesus, the correspondence of the first churches and church leaders, that's what is commonly called the New Testament, is how much they are celebrating and inviting us to consider how all of life is built on a relationship and how the best life could possibly get is a relationship with God, the God who created you, the God that loves you more than you love yourself, and how, like every great relationship, it is built on trust. But if you read the Jewish scriptures, which Genesis is one of, that predated all those writings in the New Testament, the theme is the same. That the best life could possibly get is to be in a loving, trusting relationship with the God who creates you and loves you more than you can love yourself. But here's the way that works for anybody who's ever been in a relationship with anybody. In order for us to build our relationship on trust, there has to be an opportunity not to trust. Right? So think about how all of this got started. All of this, I'm going to give you all of this landscape. You could just lap it up for your entire life, and I'm going to give you one opportunity to choose to trust me. In all of that, just one. And that's all we needed to expand into a whole destructive worldview that God's withholding from us in life as a depleting resource. And here's how that little tiny seed, that one opportunity to distrust and withhold and hoard starts to metastasize. Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 16, and the Lord, moving forward, Genesis chapter 3, starting in verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Pop quiz, did God say that? No. Last service, we had a 9-year-old in the front row. I was like, no. Way to go, dude. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? No, the opposite. He said you can eat any tree. Like you could eat the bark off the tree if you want to, you weirdo. There's just one tree I don't want you to touch. All right? Now, I don't know if this is literal or metaphorical, but the conversation just really illustrates something that to me feels so human. The woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from this tree, the tree that's in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it. She's enhanced it a little bit, or you will die. Eve gets a bad rap here. I think she deserves a lot of credit. Because if this was the dude, the serpent's like, did God really say? God, yeah, God totally said that. Give me that apple. That's how I would respond. Eve slows it down a little bit. She's like, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure, which is like every woman in my life. Like, I'm not so sure. Way to go, Eve. But she had the odds stacked against her, even though it started off well. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened. It's true. You'll be like God in a sense because you'll know good and evil, and that's true. And this is how I know that my truth is not the truth. It's when my truth is mostly true. It's like true enough for me to be convinced by it, like life is a depleting resource. I got plenty of evidence to back that up. I didn't get that promotion. I didn't get the girl. I didn't get the whatever. Yeah, there's some evidence to back up the fact that God's withholding from me. Life's a depleting resource. Yeah. So how often have you, just to reflect on how this might look like your human experience, how often have you faced one limit in one area of your life and made up a whole worldview of scarcity? How often, from our youngest years, have we so fixated on one thing that we do not have that we are blinded to the many things that we do? How often have we defined our relationships with each other, and maybe for some of you, your relationship with God based on what you currently are not experiencing that you think you are entitled to or you think you most desperately need? So again, this just feels so much like me and so much of like what I've experienced before. And it's not just that I don't have something that I think I need or I think I want. It must be that God has an ulterior motive that I'm not tuned into, that he doesn't love me or I'm not good enough for him to get good stuff, that God's withholding. So the story goes on because that mindset has started to take hold. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. See proof. That's all it took for Adam. Hey, you want some apples? Sure, okay. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. And for the very first time in our existence, we were introduced to words like shame and guilt and need and quit. And that's why I think it was called the knowledge of good and evil. Because all of a sudden we had a perspective of the world that reduced our experience and reduced our relationships. Because as long as I'm living with a scarcity mindset, even my act of service to you and my act of goodness is going to be laced with just a little bit of need. I don't have enough, so I need to get it from everybody in my life. I don't have enough, and so I need to get it from every experience in my life. I don't have enough. So maybe I am not enough. We often, when we're working with, I'm an executive coach, and when we're working with clients, we'll often use a tool that we call the event perception tool. And this is very helpful for leaders, clients who are working in all kinds of spheres and industries and all levels of authority and influence, from startup founders to we work with Fortune 10 companies to single parents with a side hustle and everything in between. And this is a helpful framework for us to begin seeing how we can show up to the world with different mindsets. You have events happening in your life. So let's imagine that this was you were up for a promotion and then you didn't get it. That's an event. It's not a moral event. It's just a thing that happened. You're up for a promotion. You didn't get it. Some of you know that experience really well. So then there's some associated behaviors. And that might be, okay, I'm going to work a little bit harder, so maybe I'll be up for it next time. Or maybe that is, I'm going to go look for another job because this isn't my opportunity. Or for some of us, that means, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to gossip about the person who got the promotion. I'm going to sabotage them. If we're honest, that happens sometimes too. You have some behaviors after the event, and then that creates a different result. It creates a new event. Maybe you do get the next promotion. Maybe you do get a new job. Maybe you do create division on your team, right? So some events happen, we behave a certain way, a new event happens. Now, what I want us to consider is that every time we behave towards an event, it's usually based on something we feel about that. So we feel overlooked. We might feel depressed. We might feel disappointed. We might feel doubtful. We might feel excited. And so then that creates the behavior, which creates a new result. So often when we're working with people, we've not really graduated from what Paul said 2,000 years ago, is that you are transformed by renewing your mind. If you can think about it differently, you will change how you live. You'll change your life. It's the same stuff. So a lot of times in professional settings, leadership development, and often in a lot of churches, we focus first on the behavior, like behavior modification to try and create a new event. Like if you could just get your act together, then maybe you'll feel differently about it and maybe you'll create more opportunity. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes that works. Just act like a different person or act like you're okay with this. And something else is going to happen. That's okay. You can kind of act your way into a feeling sometimes. But it's far more sustainable and productive if we can get under the heart of the feeling, and underneath every single feeling you and I have is a belief that created that feeling. We often say that feelings float on a sea of beliefs. And when you got looked over by that promotion, there's one way to look at that event and say, I had that coming to me, and life's unfair. Okay, so then your behavior associated with that might be revenge. But if you were just to throw on for just a second a different lens, it was like, you know what? Maybe God knows what's best for me, and this opportunity at this time wasn't it. I'm not done. I'm still breathing, bro. I can go on and do something else. I can still create value. I can support the person who got the promotion. And guess what? There's going to be an opportunity perfect for me at the right time that's going to show up, and that's going to create a whole different set of behaviors. So if we can change the mindset, even if we don't feel like it, catch that, church. If you can swap out your mindset even before you feel like it, then you're going to all of a sudden discover a whole new set of choices available to you that you didn't even think you had before. First example I can remember from this was when I was a teenager. It was my first job, and tax time came up. Sorry, there's a little PTSD because this is the season we're all in right now. And I got a tax return from my tiny little paycheck. I got a tiny little return. I thought it was the best day ever. I was like, you kidding me? I got a bonus just for being an American? This is amazing. My dad's like, not so fast. You see, son, the way I look at taxes is I love to owe taxes. I'm like, Dad, you're crazy. Why would you do that? He says, well, listen, if you get a tax return, that means that the government borrowed your money interest-free for a certain amount of time. If you pay taxes, that means you borrow the government's money interest-free for a certain amount of time. You get to choose which one will drive your behavior. I was like, bro, that's amazing. You're so wise, Dad. So wise. And that changed my behavior. So right now, whatever area you're feeling scarcity in, you have a certain belief about that scarcity, like you don't have everything that you need. And you will contort yourself to get somebody to like you or get somebody to fall in love with you until you get the thing that you think you need, if that's your belief. Maybe your belief is that there really is one pie and all of the slices are being eaten up by everybody around you. And so if you don't rob, steal, cheat, lie to try and get a little bit of it, then it's going to run out. There won't be anything available for you, that opportunity, that paycheck, that relationship. You're going to relate to it differently. The whole pie, if right now you believe that you are not somebody, you will not be okay, you cannot be at peace unless you have certain things racked up on a resume or racked up in a bank account or racked up in your social status, if you believe that you will not be at peace until you have those things, you will not have joy until you have those things, then that's going to show up in your behavior. By hook or by crook, you're going to try and get those things in your life because you're not a whole human until you have them. And I know I'm hitting home for some of you right now. But if we would be willing to swap out this core belief that life is a depleting resource with a different belief, that there's a God who loves to give, he can't help but give, and that God has already always given you and will forever be giving you the thing that you need most, even if you don't have right now all that you want, and that's himself. Then that is going to show up in a different set of behaviors that get to combat the feelings of scarcity. You tracking with me? Yeah. So the way to get under some of that anxiety and some of the hoarding and some of the fear is to swap out that belief and then maybe behave accordingly. And I want to show you what that looks like in just a second. But first, I want to celebrate the fact, again, that what we're doing is swapping out a lie for the truth, the lie of scarcity for the truth of abundance, because before we ever fell for the lie of scarcity, there was the truth of abundance, and it is the air in your lungs. It is the beauty of the creation around you, and it is a God who manufactured you to live in perfect relationship with him. I understand if right now you're looking at the glass and you're looking at the gap, and you might have experienced some setbacks like we had before. Oh, dear God. This is it. This is the only chance I've got, and then all of a sudden, kids need braces. Dear Lord. All of a sudden, she dumps you. That was the one. The only one. Or, I was lamenting with some parents earlier, your kids decide they want to go to college? How dare they? I've got one at Loyola Marymount. Guess what? College isn't cheaper than it used to be. It's not just gas that got more expensive. Dear Lord, wouldst that this cup be taken from me? Isn't it interesting, though, that as we experience this gap in our lives, we've chosen to use this as the definition of our God. So we are looking through the provision to define the provider, rather than saying we are already in perfect relationship with the faucet, the unending resource, and in his wisdom and in his time, he is more than capable of supplying everything that we need and so much of what we want. And if we are honest about our lives, that is your state of being right now, that you do have everything that you need and some of what you want. Proof that there is a God who cannot help but give. And you might be asking the question, which is a good one, then why does God allow the gap at all? Why? The reason that God allows the limits in our lives is so that we have the opportunity to trust, because by trusting, we build the thing that we need most, the thing that will never disappoint us, the thing that will never leave us or forsake us, and that is a loving relationship with the God that loves us more than we love ourselves. And if my want cup was completely full to overflowing, then I may forget that what I need most is the one who gave me all of this. What I need more than anything is the joy that I can find in a relationship with him in all seasons of life. Some of you have had seasons of your life, you might be in it now, where your cup is full to the brim and overflowing with a whole bunch of what you want. It's been a really lucrative season for you. Right now, your relationships are they're kind of in the zone. Some of you know what that's like when your marriage is like in the zone. You know, your friendships are just like, everything's kind of working out. Like, this is great. And how often we will anesthetize ourselves to how much we desperately need and are dependent upon our relationship with the Lord. So sometimes we can get spoiled with provision. And unless we are routinely practicing our desperate dependence on him, when we experience the lack in life, when we experience the darkness, it's going to be very difficult for us to find that light switch in the dark. So even now, if you're feeling like life is overflowing and things are doing okay, you're not feeling scarcity right now, this is still an incredible opportunity to change how you relate to all of the supply that you have in your life, because there's something that you need even more than that. So here's a couple of things that we can take away from this if we want to act as though God is an ever-giving God. If we want to act as though life is not a depleting resource, here's a few ways that we can apply this. First, if you've not yet listened to last week's message, or maybe you just need to go back and reconsider it again, I would really invite you to pray through and act on the generosity challenge. That's an incredible way to experiment with something that combats scarcity, an act of generosity. Just experiment, test the Lord as he's invited us to do, to see if he does not enhance your experience of life as you begin to give, which I know seems so crazy if right now what you think is you don't have enough. Everybody has enough to give something. And it may, in addition to finances, it may be time. I know this seems so nuts, but if right now you feel like you don't have enough time, find an opportunity to give your time in a place where there's not a clear ROI on that. This could just be with your kids. It could be volunteering here at Epic. There's a way to give your time. And what it does is it doesn't necessarily give you more time in your life, although there's actually some scientific proof that generous people live longer. But actually what it does is it changes how you relate to time itself. Like time being present with where you are and the people that you're with and the needs that are right in front of you really does enrich how you are experiencing life and what you see. So giving your time away is a massive piece. There's a couple of other ones that came up for me when I was traveling here. And so I think these might at least be for me. I think God's Spirit was like, Joseph, you've got to pay attention to this. But it might also be for somebody else in the room. This is a weird one, I think. That is to combat my scarcity by confession. And already you're like, I'm not going to do that one. No, seriously, like, listen. What if, and this is a commitment I made in the first hour together, so now it's on record and you all can hold me to it, is to confess to the person that I've been jealous of that I'm jealous of them. That I've been harboring jealousy. There's a person I have in mind right now, and that has leaked out in my behavior. I've had some little sidebar conversations tearing them down and actually tearing down one of the relationships in their life as though their abundance threatens me. And I know that that's somewhere in the grand scheme of things, the butterfly effect of my actions, that does make a mess for them in a way that it didn't need to. I've acted in a way that reduces life. So I'm going to confess this to them. And then, to add a little bit more weight to the bar, I want to get curious with that person. Hey, how did you get the thing that I admire in you? What risks did you take? What setbacks did you experience? How has your faith played out in what I'm witnessing here in your life? Because, wow, what an incredible opportunity to get wisdom from somebody if I'm not threatened by them. There's an abundance there waiting for you. I tell my kids all the time that you're going to either earn wisdom or steal it. So steal it every chance you get, because earning wisdom is super expensive. So that might be an opportunity to combat scarcity, because there's an abundance there waiting for you. Another one for me is celebration, to celebrate the people or the things that seem to threaten you, to honor them publicly. But the one that I really want to leave us with right now is what I consider to be a daily, if not a moment-by-moment practice. And that's to get very, very honest with this almost irrational giver, to talk to the God who loves you more than you love yourself about the lie of scarcity that you're choosing to believe from time to time. So to make the most of this moment, I want you to identify that one area right now, at least one area where you're experiencing scarcity. And you're like, oh, I feel like this is running out on me. Your time, your health, money, opportunity, I don't know what it is. And you're like, I've been living as though life doesn't get going until I have all of this. I want you to focus on that one area right now, and then we're going to just get really, really honest with God about how we're relating to that and see if something different doesn't happen as a result. So right now, I'd like to invite you to stand up with me. And if you could put your hands out like this, just in a posture that might for you right now mean I'm surrendering this thing to you. Like, God, I know I don't feel like I have enough, but I've got enough to give or to trust you with completely. Or this might be a posture of receptivity. God, I've kind of closed myself off to how you provide because I've been so focused on how I can make something happen. So this might just be a posture of receiving. Go ahead and close your eyes, and just for 60 seconds, we're going to just reflect on abundance and scarcity. First, on abundance. So what does that look like? It looks like gratitude. In this moment, I want you to identify something in your life that is good, that you didn't earn. Just thank God for that. Something good in your life that you didn't earn. Oh, thank you so much. And now I invite you to just get really honest with where you felt like life was running out on you and God was withholding from you and you were overlooked, overwhelmed, catching up, falling behind. And just share that in the most honest words you can with the God who already knows it and wants to meet you in that place of want and lack. And then if you want, as we move into a brief time of an anthem, reminding us that God can be trusted with absolutely everything. that giving him our highest attention and the top priority in our lives is when life really begins. As we move into that moment, even if you don't feel like it right now, I invite you to say, God, I want to live today like you are enough and you have enough for me. God, I want to live today like you are enough and you have enough for me. All I need is you.